In the mid to late 1980s, I lived in suburban Phoenix, Arizona. And I think for this story, the key was that I lived there. I wasn't visiting. I wasn't a tourist. And like many folks, when we live someplace, we tend not to be tourists in our own homes. Or at least I didn't. Which is to say, despite living in Phoenix area, in Arizona, for 4 years when I was in high school and then living there in the summers and breaks during college, I never saw the Grand Canyon. Ostensibly Arizona's greatest wonder, perhaps one of the world's greatest wonders, as we talked about earlier. It was only about a 3-hour drive from where I lived. I mean, it was an easy day trip. I mean, if you think about us here in Delaware, that's a hike, right? You're not just going to drive up for the weekend. I could have gone any day of the week, but I didn't. I only saw the canyon in the multitude of images of those who had seen it before me. And then I left Arizona, first to go to college and then off to start a life and career. I did eventually actually go and see the Grand Canyon a couple of decades later. Now with a wife and children, now as a tourist. I went with some excitement, especially to bring my kids to this wonder. And I also went with maybe a little embarrassment that I neglected taking the time to go to witness the wonder for myself for so long, even when it was kind of more or less in my backyard. Anyway, we went. My family and I went, and I stood on the rim of this vast chasm, seeing the layers of earth that had built up over eons of geologic time and then worn away after even more eons. The color and the enormity of the canyon, the way the light changes its quality from moment to moment, all against the smallest of my life in comparison. And I stood there and I thought, meh. I mean, to be sure, the canyon is beautiful and it is awesome. But for whatever reason that day, I was underwhelmed. I knew I should have felt a sense of wonder, but I didn't. So I was thinking this week about this trip to the canyon, and it reminded me of a story in Genesis. And it's a story of a wonder in the desert. Now, for those of you who have been around this church for a while, you may recall that one of my favorite biblical characters is Jacob. Jacob, the son of Isaac and Rebekah, the twin brother of Esau. He's got great stories. There's a lot in there. Jacob, now, here's the basic story at this point in the cycle. Jacob has, with the help of his mom, tricked his dad and effectively stole his brother's birthright blessing. Esau was the elder of the two twins. So Esau was supposed to get this birthright blessing, and Jacob tricked his dad into giving it to him. So while Jacob got Isaac's blessing, Jacob goes on the run to his uncle Laban's place to seek sanctuary from his brother's rage. His brother was really unhappy about this, right? So Jacob's on the run. And so he's traveling to his uncle's place to hide. The uncle is Rebekah's brother, so his mom's brother. And so there's this scene where Jacob falls asleep in the desert mountain. And he takes a stone for his pillow. And there he dreams. And his dream is of the ladder. The ladder we just sang about, right? The ladder that stretched from he dreamt of this ladder that stretched from his campsite all the way up to heaven. And on the ladder, moving up and down on the ladder, were all these angels moving along the ladder into heaven. And he at the top of the ladder, Yahweh speaks to Jacob, saying, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and the east, to the north and the south, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised. So Jacob wakes up. And he's kind of the opposite of meh. He is in a state of wonderment and awe. And he says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And then he does the thing that I think a lot of us tend to do when we experience these moments of wonder and awe in our lives. When we are awestruck, when we are gobsmacked, one of my favorite words, gobsmacked. He builds an altar. He takes the pillow stone, the rock pillow that he was sleeping on, and turns it on an end, anoints it with oil. And what he's trying to do there is concretize that experience, right? He's trying to take this ineffable thing that just happened to him and make it solid, make it real, hold on to it. He's trying to create this sanctified place, a sanctuary to which we could turn to or to guide others to relive that wonder. And this is the thing, I think we all still do this. I don't mean we actually build altars. Well, most of us don't. I do sometimes. But we so often try to capture a sense of wonder, a sense of awe, that transcendent experience into something we can return to. And today, we mostly just take out our phones and take a picture. Same thing. We take our photographs, maybe we post them on social media. But the photos, the images, the altars never quite capture that experience, right? That sudden intake of breath we call inspiration, the ineffable embodied feeling of witnessing wonder. And I think it's the proliferation of the images of the Grand Canyon that led me to my meh reaction when I finally stood on the rim, because perhaps in our attempts to concretize the experience for ourselves and for others, what we risk is diminishing the wonderness of the moment. Yeah, I just made that word up, wonderness. To be honest, friends, I'm not really sure I understand Jacob's dream at all. It's kind of weird. And more so, why Jacob was so affected by it. I mean, if it had been my dream, when I woke up, I'd mostly be assessing what I had eaten the day before. To have developed such a trippy scene. True confession, dark chocolate does it every time. I'm also really confused about the ladder. Why would a ladder be needed? I mean, if you're an angel, do you really need to use a ladder? It seems so earthbound, this ladder. And don't you all have wings? Anyway, I digress, and it wasn't my dream. Still, in the midst of all the weirdness of the story, there is this profound comment that Jacob makes. In some translations, he thinks it to himself. I think this is interesting. In some translations, they say he thinks this to himself. In others, he says it out loud. In my opinion, he says it out loud. He says, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And that's where I want us to stay for just a moment, because I think Jacob is able to say something about wonder, about awe, about those ineffable experiences that we feel. Something is present to us in ways that it has not been in the past, in ways we don't often notice in our ordinary living. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And of course, friends, if Lord trips in your mouth, then freely translate until it doesn't. Surely grace is in this place, and I did not know it. Surely nature is in this place, and I did not know it. Surely something I don't yet have a word for is in this place, and I did not know it. Surely love is in this place, and I did not know it. Now, Jacob isn't at the edge of the Grand Canyon. He's not staring down the vastness of a glacier or feeling the current of a river pushing against his body. He's sleeping on a rock. A more or less ordinary moment. Okay, maybe not the rock pillow, but otherwise, a normal, everyday moment. He has slept many nights, has had many dreams, but then suddenly this dream, this moment happens. This is what he's pointing to when he says, "And I did not know it." I did not know that this ordinary place in my ordinary life, doing my ordinary things, that I was surrounded by wonder. So focused have I been on just making it to the next moment of my life, I have failed to see where the Lord, where God, where love is manifesting all around me. It is this not knowing, this kind of obliviousness, dare I say, asleepness, made that one up too, through which we tend to move in this world, in this life. In our hearts, we yearn for the wondrous, the inspiration, the experience of awe. We seek to be gobsmacked. That's why when we find it, we want to capture it and hold on to it. We build our altars. We snap our phones. And we keep looking for these wondrous things out there, out away and apart from our pedestrian lives. The wonder might be in our backyard, but it may take us 2 decades to bother to go see it. Here's someone you don't hear me quote very often. St. Augustine. In his Confessions, St. Augustine writes this: "People travel to wonder at the height of the mountains, at the huge waves of the seas, at the long course of the rivers, at the vast compass of the ocean, at the circular motion of the stars, and yet they pass by themselves without wondering." The little girl in our story this morning didn't pass by herself without wondering. 7 wonders of the world: to see, to hear, to touch, to laugh, to love. So embedded in our mission, this Mill Creek mission, is this invitation to awaken to love. We invite one another to wake up from our slumbers and to be gobsmacked by the wonders that surround us every day. There's a singer-songwriter whom I adore. His name's Peter Mayer. You may be familiar with him. And somehow, every time around this time of year, this song always gets in my head, and I don't know why. But there's lines from this song. The song's called Holy Now. But I just love this part. He says, read a questioning child's face and say it's not a testament. That'd be very hard to say. See another new morning come and say it's not a sacrament. I tell you, you can't be done. This morning outside I stood and I saw a little red-winged bird shining like a burning bush, singing like a scripture verse. And it made me want to bow my head. I remember when church let out, he writes, and how things have changed since then, because everything is holy now. It used to be a world half there, heaven's second-rate hand-me-downs. But now I walk it with a reverent air, because everything is holy now. So friends, let this be my invitation to you in our days ahead. Awaken yourselves from your slumbers and feel the wonder of this life. Amen. And I love you, and may we live in blessing.